Today you're going to hear a true story, so absurd, it sounds like a lie. But relax, because here, the strange helps you fall asleep. Imagine a map, one of those old ones, folded many times over, carrying the faint scent of aged paper and faded ink. Fine lines stretch across entire landscapes. Mountain ranges rise in relief with simple brown strokes. Blue rivers wind between the names of villages you might never visit. But there they are, printed, silent, waiting. The map is a promise that anything can be found. You just have to look. There's something magical about looking at a map. You're not there, but you are. Your eyes travel before your feet ever leave the ground. It's like daydreaming. It's like telling stories without words. But what if one of those stories had no truth to it at all? What if, among so many cities, rivers, and roads, there was a place that never existed? That's what happened with Argleton. A strange name, almost made up, but recorded as if it were real. Not in ancient parchments, but in the most modern digital mapping systems. You could search for it on GPS, plot a route to get there, check the weather forecast, even see nearby streets. But upon arrival, there would be nothing. No house, no wall, no sign, nothing but an empty field, and the faint sound of the wind whistling through tall grass. Argleton was a mapped city, listed, recognized, but it never existed. We're not talking here about distant myths like the sunken Atlantis, or about cities erased by the dust of time. We're talking about a mistake, or maybe a joke, or perhaps something else. The story of the city that was mapped, but never existed, is an invitation to doubt, to contemplate the things we believe are solid, simply because they are recorded. How many times have we trusted a map without questioning it? How many times have we believed something to be real, simply because it was written down? This story, brief as it is like a mirror reflecting our own desire to find meaning in the world, even if that meaning lies hidden in a typo, or in a subtle trap laid by invisible hands. But don't worry about answers now. Here tonight, we'll simply walk calmly along this trail of data and doubts, like someone observing footprints in the sand, without knowing for sure to whom they belong. You're going to meet Argleton, or rather, you're going to hear about it, like visiting a city in a dream, knowing deep down that when you wake, it won't be there. And to understand how this strange point appeared on the map, we need to go back a little, back to the very nature of being human, to that ancient desire to find what is lost, and to name what never truly existed. As maps show us what exists, our minds are naturally drawn to what's missing. Not just to real places, but to those that escape geography. Lost cities, vanished kingdoms, mysteries that were never found. It's an ancient fascination. Since childhood, we've heard stories of cities that disappeared, buried under sand, water, or simply erased by time. Atlantis, the legendary sunken city, is one of the most famous examples. A civilization so perfect and advanced that it was swallowed by the sea, leaving behind only a whisper of mystery. El Dorado, the Golden City, equally mysterious, promised incalculable riches and sparked dreams and desires for centuries. Explorers crossed dense forests and treacherous rivers, guided only by the hope of finding it. But they never did. These cities, real or not, hold a deep fascination. They are not just places. They are symbols. They are maps of our own longing for something beyond what the eye can see. And deep down, perhaps that's why we trust maps so much. They don't just point to what's there. They suggest that everything can be found, that the unknown can be mapped, mastered, understood. But what happens when the map points to a place that simply does not exist? How will we feel? Does that emptiness open space for fear, for doubt, or perhaps for the hope that there is still something left to discover? In many ways, these lost cities are like our dreams. They exist on the border between the real and the imaginary. They are places where history meets legend, where certainty meets doubt. It's a liminal, delicate, and vast territory, and it is in this space that Argleton fits. Not a city lost in time, but a city lost in the space of information. Unlike Atlantis or El Dorado, which were hidden by natural forces or ancient tales, Argleton was created, drawn, inserted into digital databases. Like a specter within the lines of modernity. It's curious to think that even in the information age, mistakes can create alternative realities. That the digital, which promised clarity and precision, can deceive. And that emptiness can sometimes feel more tangible than concrete. This realization invites a gentle reflection. Could it be that in trying to map the world, we are also mapping our own limits? That part of the truth will always slip away. That part of history will always be written between the lines, in the blank spaces? As we continue this journey, remember that the fascination with lost cities is not just about geography. It's about what they mean to us as human beings, about our relentless search for meaning and belonging. It is this search that will help us better understand the story of Argleton and the nature of cities that exist, even when they do not. In the midst of increasingly digital maps, where streets and cities appear and vanish with the update of a database, something curious began to catch the attention of a few. In one area of England, specifically in the region of Lancashire, between real towns and familiar roads, a strange, almost enigmatic name appeared: Argleton. It wasn't a small forgotten village, nor a distant neighborhood. It was a city mapped out with streets, precise coordinates, and clear boundaries. But for those who looked closely, it didn't exist. At least, not in the way a normal place exists. Argleton appeared suddenly, not in old maps, but in the digital versions used by millions to find their way, plan trips, and discover places. On platforms like Google Maps, Argleton was there. A point in space, an address to which someone could be guided. But that wasn't the only strange thing. Argleton didn't appear in just one map. Its name, its streets, even small references appeared across different cartographic databases, feeding systems that depend on precision to function. This created a kind of gentle, almost poetic paradox. A place real enough to exist digitally, yet non-existent for anyone who tried to walk its streets. As if it were a ghost town made of zeros and ones. The question soon arose, simple yet profound. How was Argleton born? Who put it there? And, most importantly, why? Some began to investigate. And the answer was more complex than the mere presence of a digital error. Argleton may have originated from an old cartographic practice, a method used to protect the copyright of maps. Mapmakers, throughout history, would deliberately insert errors into their maps, known as trap streets, to detect unauthorized copies. The idea was simple. If a competing map contained the exact same errors, it was possible to prove plagiarism. Thus, Argleton might have been one of those traps, a fabricated city with streets and names meant to exist only on paper or in code. A lie that became real within its digital space. But that doesn't explain everything. Because, unlike a simple trap street, Argleton took on a life of its own across multiple digital platforms, acquiring details and references that went beyond what would be necessary for a mere error. And what about the people who tried to visit it? What did they feel when they arrived at an empty field where GPS claimed there should be streets and houses? This city, born on the map, yet never truly born in reality, invites us to think about the nature of reality, about the limits of technology, about how our tools, which are supposed to show the world as it is, can create illusions. It's an invitation to slow down, to look at maps not only as guides, but as narratives, stories that sometimes tell more than the places themselves. To understand the strange existence of Argleton, we need to look at the map more closely. If you've opened your map app today, you can imagine the silent workings behind the streets, cities, and precisely traced routes. In this vast digital universe, Argleton appeared nestled among very real places. Near Afton, Aintree, and Kirkby in the Lancashire region of northwest England. It's an area where roads cross fields, where modernity meets rural landscapes, and where many small villages and neighborhoods make up the human mosaic. But where exactly was this mysterious town? If you typed Argleton into your GPS, you'd get an exact geographic point, an address with coordinates that pinpointed a precise location at the meeting of some roads and trails. On the screen, it looked like any other town, with defined streets, boundaries, and even roads connecting its supposed neighborhoods. But the reality, on the ground, was different. Anyone who made the trip expecting houses, buildings, or some form of urban infrastructure would find only an open field, covered in grass and a few trees, an empty space between cultivated lands. There was no trace of sidewalks, lampposts, street signs, or any indication of an organized community. Nothing that matched the digital point on the map. It's a strange, almost unsettling feeling, as if standing before an erased memory, or a city that never came to be. A place that exists only on the screen, but not in life. And most curious of all, this didn't happen for lack of attempts. Journalists, curious explorers, local residents, and even hikers passing through all reported the same thing. A strange emptiness, a quiet field seemingly untouched by the technology that claimed it was a town. But Argleton wasn't alone. Other sources, databases, and maps from different companies also included this name and location, reinforcing the virtual existence of this space. It's as if the digital world had created a reflection, a geographical shadow with no physical form. And that raises interesting questions about what we consider real. Does reality depend on physical substance? Or can it also exist in representations, in data, in information? The city that appears on the map but not in the concrete world challenges that distinction. It's an invitation to think about the nature of reality in an increasingly digital and connected world. Imagine the moment when someone, curious, decides to follow the map. Not just look at it, but actually set foot in the place that an app indicated as a city. It's a simple gesture, but loaded with expectation. This was the experience of several people who had heard about Argleton. They opened their GPS, traced the route, and followed the path, crossing the real streets of Lancashire until they reached the marked spot. Perhaps, deep down, expecting a mystery, or just confirming a doubt. Upon arrival, they found an open, vast, and tranquil field. Nothing but grass, a few trees swaying in the wind, and a gray sky hanging overhead. No sign of sidewalks, buildings, or any urban infrastructure. This emptiness, which should have been filled with houses, cars, and people, seemed strangely full. Full of absence, full of silence, full of the calm that only emptiness can offer. For those walking there, it was an almost surreal experience, as if the map had created a place the eyes could not see, as if the city had been erased before it even existed. Some reported a feeling of disconnection, a kind of light estrangement, mixing curiosity with a hint of melancholy. It was the sensation of standing before a broken promise. A promise to find something that dissolved the instant you tried to touch it. But there was also beauty in that emptiness. A calm beauty that invites contemplation. An invitation to slow down, to look at the world not only for what it shows, but for what it doesn't show. And it's curious to think that this experience was not unique. Many others, guided by the same curiosity, made the same journey, and found the same field, the same silence, the same emptiness. What does this tell us? Perhaps that, at times, what we call reality depends more on our belief than on physical existence. That the map, with its almost magical power, can create places where concrete has never arrived. Some began calling Argleton a digital ghost town. A name that perfectly matches the sensation of standing before something that should be there, but isn't. That first visit revealed more than just the absence of a city. It revealed our desire for connection, for confirmation, for touching what once seemed unreachable. As we walk through the story of Argleton, this feeling will remain a constant reminder. Not everything on the map can be reached. Not everything marked can be touched. But that is exactly where the beauty of this story lies. In the meeting point between what is and what seems to be. In the silence between streets that do not exist. After the discovery of the empty space where Argleton was supposed to be, something caught the attention of keen observers. This city was not an isolated mistake. It was not alone in its ghostly existence on digital maps. Curiously, what seemed like an error, a flaw in a system, began to reappear on other platforms, databases, and even in different versions of online maps. It was as if, instead of disappearing, Argleton had gained a life of its own in the world of data. Replicated, multiplied, and confirmed in systems that were supposed to be precise. This suggested something more than a mere typo. It indicated that this city, created from nothing and never truly existing, had been inserted systematically, almost intentionally, at multiple levels of the digital cartographic universe. The idea that an error could repeat itself so persistently sparked fascination, but also a subtle unease. It carried the unsettling notion that reality, in the digital space, could be shaped, altered, fabricated. This repetition showed that Argleton had gone beyond the boundaries of chance. It had become a kind of enigma for map experts and location systems. Professional cartographers began to put forward theories. Was it a trap? A prank? Or perhaps a way to protect copyrights, creating an invisible signature hidden between lines and pixels? The persistent presence of Argleton in various databases suggested the error was neither local nor temporary. It was almost a digital watermark, a hidden whisper left by those who map the world. This recurring pattern even led researchers to question the nature of the maps we use. How could a place that never existed spread, gain visibility, and become real within a web of information? The answer, it seems, is linked to an old cartographic practice in which small errors are deliberately inserted to ensure a map's originality. But Argleton goes further. Unlike a simple trap street, it was carefully built with multiple roads, names, and precise coordinates. It's a curious reflection of the digital world we live in, a place where information can create parallel realities, almost tangible, yet completely hollow. Meanwhile, for those who used the map without knowing the story, Argleton was just another point to head toward, a legitimate destination in the sea of data. This repeated error, more than just a mistake, is an invitation to rethink what we consider truth. If reality can be duplicated, fabricated, and spread through digital networks, where do we draw the line between what is real and what is fiction? At the heart of Argleton's story lies the fascinating idea of a city that exists only in the digital world. A city that, although absent in flesh and stone, takes shape and gains presence in maps, apps, and databases, like a subtle, almost invisible shadow that exists by its own will. Calling it a digital ghost town is more than a poetic expression. It is a way of understanding a modern phenomenon where virtual space can overlap physical space, and where what does not exist can still gain a paradoxical existence. Argleton has no streets to walk, no residents to talk to, no daily life to observe. But in the universe of data, it is an undeniable reality. It is there, marked with street names, identified by coordinates, ready to be visited by anyone who wishes. This phenomenon opens a door to thinking about what it means to exist. What is a city? Is it the collection of buildings and people? Or is it also a recognized and named point, even if invisible? In the digital age, these questions take on a new dimension, because information has power, and the power to shape perceptions and decisions. For the system that plotted routes, Argleton was a valid destination. For the database, it was a legitimate record. For the user, it was a name on the map that could be selected. This digital existence creates a kind of gentle paradox. A city that is not and yet is. A place that can be visited, even without being there. But how did this all happen? How can a city be born out of nothing, without ever being built? And what does this tell us about the maps we use, and about the world they present to us? The answer lies in the practices of modern cartography. Digital maps are built from countless sources: satellite images, public data, user contributions, and private databases. And to protect copyright, it is common to insert traps, fake places, invented streets, to detect illegal copies. Argleton is one of these traps, but with a special twist. It is a complete city, with streets and names, not just a typo. It is a detailed digital construction, created to exist only in the realm of data. This makes it unique, almost mythical, a symbol of the era in which information blends with reality, creating parallel worlds where nothing is exactly as it seems. For those who look closely, this story invites us to slow down and reflect, not just on Argleton, but on all the places and information we consume every day. Can we truly trust everything we see on maps? Is the real, the concrete, always what the data indicates? As this doubt takes root, the digital ghost town gains an almost poetic meaning. It becomes a silent reminder that even within the precision of numbers and coordinates, error, mystery, and imagination still have their place. As the mystery of Argleton spread, the first attempts at explanation began to appear. What could explain the existence of a city so detailed on digital maps, yet invisible in the real world? Some claimed it was a simple mapping error, a glitch in the database that propagated, a human or automated oversight, which gained traction because it was replicated across various systems. Others suggested that Argleton was a kind of trap created by cartographers, an old practice of inserting false data to protect copyright. Known as map traps or trap streets, these false entries serve to identify unauthorized copies of maps. In that sense, Argleton would be a sophisticated trap, a fictitious city, crafted with enough detail to appear real, but impossible to find. But there were also bolder theories, flirting with fantasy. Some spoke of digital manipulation, conspiracies to divert attention, or even parallel universes where Argleton actually existed. These ideas, though unlikely, show how mystery sparks people's imagination, blending facts and dreams. The internet itself became a stage for debates, investigations, and even jokes involving Argleton. Forums and social media discussed what was real and what was invented. This multiplicity of interpretations reveals something important. The city that never existed became a symbol of what technology can create, not just in images and data, but in narratives. And these narratives, when shared, come to life. They take shape. This is one of the beauties of the Argleton mystery. It invites us to look beyond the data, to what that data stirs within us. And perhaps, in this meeting between error and imagination, lies a gentle lesson for those who use maps, apps, and technology in daily life. Not everything that appears on our screens is absolute truth. Sometimes, what seems real is nothing more than a story told by machines, by people, by dreams. In the ancient world of maps, when cartographers still drew with quill and ink on parchment, there was already a subtle secret: cartographic traps. Small, carefully inserted lies designed to protect the work of mapmakers against unauthorized copies. These traps, known as map traps or trap streets, were invented streets, false paths, or even small details that didn't exist in the real terrain. The goal was clear, though unspoken, to identify when a map had been copied. If a competitor reproduced these errors, the original owner could prove that plagiarism had occurred. Over time, this practice evolved but never disappeared. In today's digital maps, with their complexity and multiple sources, traps take on different forms, yet the concept remains. Creating small mistakes to protect intellectual property. And this is where Argleton fits in, as a modern, sophisticated cartographic trap. It is more than an invented street. It is an entire city, with streets, names, and a precise location, existing only in the world of data. These traps may seem harmless, even poetic, but they hold real power. The power to create alternative realities. To give existence to places that don't exist, yet in the digital world become real. It's fascinating to think that, in the quiet of codes and algorithms, these ghost cities exist. Points of convergence between human creation and technology. They remind us that even in the age of precision, there is room for imperfection, for the play between the real and the invented, and more. They show us that maps, which we rely on so much to guide us, are also narratives. Stories drawn to tell the world, but that sometimes tell something more. If the idea of cartographic traps sparks your curiosity, you're not alone. Many are captivated by these small secrets hidden in our everyday maps. A lie, when well placed, can be a silent and powerful ally. In the world of cartography, that statement sounds paradoxical, almost poetic. But the practice of cartographic traps reveals that small lies are used for a greater purpose, to protect the work and preserve the originality of maps. Imagine a line drawn not to show a real path, but to indicate that this particular map is unique, different from any other. That false line, that non-existent street, is an invisible sign, a secret code for those who know where to look. In this way, the strategic lie works as a guardian. It creates a territory where the true and the false meet, intertwined, protecting the rights of the mapmaker. And this strategy is not limited to old maps. In the digital world, with its abundant data and constant updates, this lie takes on sophisticated forms. Argleton, the city that never existed, is an example of this. More than a mistake, it is an intentional creation, a lie built to exist only within the lines and pixels of digital maps. But what about the experience of those who try to find this lie? Those who let themselves be guided by the promise of a place, only to find emptiness? That is where the lie reveals its silent beauty. It does not seek to deceive cruelly, but to provoke reflection. It is an invitation to look at the world with more attention, more patience, more doubt. Because, in the end, what Argleton shows us is that reality is often a delicate construction, that what we call truth may have shadows, empty spaces, hidden secrets, and that the map, so reliable and ever-present in our lives, is also a field of creation, invention, and dreams. Like every story that mixes mystery and reality, that of Argleton leads us to questions about its roots. Who or what gave rise to this city that never existed? The path to understanding its origin begins with the practices of the companies responsible for digital maps. They gather data from multiple sources: public agencies, satellite images, user contributions, and, of course, their own cartographic inventories. In this tangle of information, the insertion of false data has a clear purpose: to protect copyright. But there are indications that Argleton was not a simple accidental error. Everything points to it being created by a specific company, or by a group linked to map production. Some researchers suggest that it appeared in the databases of Tele-Atlas, one of the major providers of cartographic information for giants like Google Maps. Tele-Atlas, known for its complexity and comprehensiveness, would have inserted Argleton as a digital trap to identify illegal copies of its maps. This gesture, almost invisible to most people, created a city that existed only in the data layer. But it gained prominence precisely because of its physical absence. The origin of Argleton, therefore, seems to be an intentional creation, designed to function as a seal of authenticity and protection. But the side effect was the creation of a mystery, a digital ghost city that caught the attention of curious minds and experts. It is interesting to reflect on how such a technical error or invention can generate so much fascination. Because, deep down, Argleton symbolizes the meeting point between human creation and technology, between control and chance. And even more fascinating is to realize that, despite all modernity, errors and small lies continue to be part of our daily lives. They not only deceive us but also invite us to question what is real. When an invisible city appears on the map, the digital world doesn't take long to notice. Argleton, with its ghostly existence, quickly caught attention on the internet, a place where mystery and curiosity meet, sparking conversations that cross borders. Forums, blogs, social networks, and even specialized websites began discussing the phenomenon. Users shared stories of attempts to visit the city, exchanged theories about its origin and meaning, and explored the idea of a digital ghost on the maps. This reaction was not just a passing buzz. It became a kind of modern tale, a contemporary mystery to be explored calmly and with fascination. The internet, with its ability to spread stories, gave life to Argleton beyond the maps. It became a symbol of the digital age, a gentle reminder that even in supposedly precise systems, there is room for error, for the unknown. Some users began creating images, alternate maps, and even fictional narratives about the city that never existed. This phenomenon shows how the combination of data and imagination can create new worlds, even if only for the eye and the mind. And, in the quiet of this virtual movement, Argleton gained an unexpected role. No longer just a cartographic error, but a story to be told and shared. This reaction also highlighted the limitations of the technologies we use daily. It showed that despite the apparent perfection of digital systems, they are built by humans, subject to faults and strategic decisions. The mystery of Argleton is, therefore, a metaphor for the digital world around us. A world that mixes reality, data, dreams, and errors, and deserves to be explored with attention and calm. The mystery of Argleton didn't remain only in online discussions or attempts at physical visits. Soon, experts in cartography, technology, and even passionate map enthusiasts began investigating the phenomenon more thoroughly. The first approach was simple: to try to understand how that name and location appeared in the databases. Researchers analyzed historical records, satellite data, public and private archives, everything in search of some concrete clue. But what they found was, in fact, a void almost as deep as the field where Argleton was supposed to exist. No official records, no physical or documentary evidence to justify the presence of that city. This reinforced the hypothesis that Argleton was a map trap, intentionally inserted to protect copyright. A marker left to identify possible plagiarism. However, some questions remained. Why such a detailed city, with streets, names, and even specific coordinates? Some specialists suggested that the complexity was necessary so the trap would work better, making it hard to be mistaken for a simple error. Moreover, investigations into the Tela Atlas database indicated that Argleton was part of an old version of the cartographic base and was removed after suspicions of its falsehood grew. This removal, in itself, generated even more curiosity. If Argleton was just a trap, why did its impact become so significant? The answer seems to lie in the power of information and perception. The fact that a non-existent city appeared in so many digital maps and influenced user routes brought up reflections on what we truly consider trustworthy. During this process, other less technical hypotheses also arose, talking about algorithm failures, data integration issues, and even conspiracy theories involving digital manipulation. But deep down, the investigation revealed a delicate point: the fragility of digital representations of the world. No matter how advanced the technology is, errors, and even creations, can arise. And this phenomenon is not exclusive to Argleton. Other digital ghost towns have been found in different parts of the world, showing that this practice is more common than we imagine. This discovery broadens our understanding of the maps we use. They are not just precise representations, but also living documents, subject to changes, errors, and inventions. For many, a map is a promise, a reliable guide to the unknown, an invitation to explore the world safely. But what happens when the map points to a place that doesn't exist? This is the experience of those who tried to find Argleton in the real world. People, tourists, professionals, and curious individuals who, trusting digital maps, followed their routes to the indicated spot, only to find an empty, silent field. For some, it was a mild disappointment, a curious mismatch between expectation and reality. For others, a moment of unease that raised doubts about the reliability of technology. Drivers, delivery workers, and even emergency services could be affected by this type of error, although there are no records of serious incidents in Argleton. But the very idea of a non-existent address sparked discussions about the risks and limitations of navigation systems. Some residents of nearby areas reported feeling puzzled when seeing people arriving and asking about a town they had never heard of. This quiet confusion showed how digital presence can influence everyday life, even when the place is a creation. For professionals who depend on accurate maps, such as urban planners, designers, and local authorities, the Argleton case served as a warning. A reminder that despite the precision of technology, validation in the physical world remains essential. This situation reveals a tension between the virtual and the real, between data and terrain, between what is represented and what truly exists. The story of Argleton leaves us with a silent invitation to reflect on the future of the maps we use, and on how we understand the space around us. We live in a time where technology shapes our perceptions, where reality is often mediated through screens and data. But Argleton reminds us that even within the precision of digital systems, there are limits and nuances. Maps are, at their core, human constructions, subject to errors, intentions, and even playful tricks. The presence of digital ghost towns shows that, beyond functionality, maps carry stories, marks, and secrets. They are not just guides but also living documents that reflect processes, decisions, and contexts. For the future, this lesson is valuable. When relying on navigation technologies, we should maintain a gentle awareness, a calm curiosity. Recognize that what appears on the screen may be a representation, and that the real world can surprise us. Moreover, Argleton invites us to think about how to protect originality and intellectual property in an era of fluid and shared data. Map traps, despite their flaws, represent an effort to create boundaries and identity amid the vast digital universe. But this effort also calls for responsibility. The responsibility to improve these techniques, to seek transparency and security, so that errors do not turn into confusion or frustration. For map users, the recommendation is simple and calm. Walk attentively. Be curious, question, but also allow mystery to be part of the journey. Because, in the end, the journey is as much about real paths as it is about imaginary ones, about what exists and about what we dream. Argleton, despite never having physically existed, has earned its place in the history of digital cartography. This invisible city, which emerged from map lines and data, has become a silent icon of the challenges and mysteries of the digital world. In the trajectory of cartography, Argleton symbolizes how technology, even when advanced, can create parallel realities built from codes and human intentions. It represents the complexity of a system that depends on accuracy but also harbors errors, strategies, and small fictions. Scholars and industry professionals use the case of Argleton to illustrate the limitations and paradoxes of modern cartography, to show that digital maps are not just perfect images, but living narratives subject to changes and interpretations. Moreover, Argleton inspires reflections on the relationship between physical space and digital space, on how, in the information age, places can exist in multiple dimensions, visible and invisible, real and virtual. Its story is often cited in debates about digital ethics, intellectual property, and the responsibility of companies that produce geographic data. It serves as a warning about the need for transparency and care in the development of these technologies. For the general public, Argleton is an invitation to curiosity, a story that blends mystery, technology, and philosophy, bringing a touch of dream to everyday life. And even though its physical existence is non-existent, its impact is real. A subtle presence that remains on maps, in stories, and in the imagination. Argleton, this invisible city, is more than just a simple digital error or a cartographic trap. It carries with it a meaning that goes beyond maps, data, and codes. In the silence of the void where it should exist, there is an invitation to reflect on the nature of reality. What makes a place real? Is it the physical presence, the buildings, the people? Or could it also be memory, perception, representation? Argleton challenges us to think about the threshold between the real and the imaginary, between what we see, what we believe, and what is shown to us. It is a subtle reminder that reality can be fluid, complex, and often constructed. In this sense, Argleton serves as a metaphor for the digital age we live in, where the boundaries between the physical and the virtual blur, where information, images, and data create parallel worlds that coexist with ours. The city that never existed invites us to slow down, to look more closely at what we accept as truth, to question, to dream. Because, deep down, Argleton is a space for imagination. A place where error turns into poetry, where emptiness gains meaning. And this transformation is what makes this story so special, not only because of the mystery it carries, but because of the calm it awakens by reminding us that the world is, above all, a space of possibilities. Argleton, although unique in its digital origin, is not alone in the phenomenon of ghost towns. In the physical world, there are countless places that, for various reasons, have become empty, abandoned by time, economy, or human decisions. These real towns carry a heavy silence, deserted streets, and empty buildings that tell stories of interrupted lives and dreams. They are mute witnesses to the changes that time and history imprint on the landscape. In the digital world, other ghost towns also appear, often created for reasons similar to Argleton's. Whether traps to protect data or errors, these places exist only in the invisible layer of data. This coexistence between empty real towns and digital ghost towns creates a fascinating bridge between the concrete and the virtual. A dance between what was, what is, and what could be. Thinking about these towns reminds us of the ephemerality of space, the fragility of human constructions, whether physical or digital. It invites us to contemplate the impermanence and the beauty of places, even when empty or imaginary. The calmness of this reflection is an invitation to slow down and realize that sometimes emptiness also speaks. That the silence of a deserted street or the absence on a map can be as meaningful as presence. The story of Argleton leads us to one last, calm, and profound reflection on what it means to navigate the world, whether physical or digital. Argleton, the city that never existed, remains a silent symbol of the complexities and subtleties of our era. Amid the rapid flow of information and the accelerated advancement of technology, it invites us to slow down, to look carefully, to question what we accept as reality, to make space for doubt and mystery. Its legacy is not only in cartography, digital traps, or system failures. It lies in our ability to face the unknown with serenity, to understand that, between the real and the imaginary, there is a space of possibilities and lessons. Argleton is, therefore, a story about perception and the nature of existence, about how information can build worlds that exist beyond the tangible, beyond the concrete. This legacy reminds us that reality is often a delicate construction, made of truths, lies, errors, and dreams, and that the value lies in how we observe, feel, and reflect. We've reached the end of this calm and mysterious journey through the story of Argleton, the town that never existed but came to life in the digital shadows of maps. Along this path, we saw how technology can create invisible places, digital traps that invite us to look beyond the surface, to slow down and reflect on what we consider real. Each of the topics we explored together brought us a little closer to this gentle mystery, revealing layers of meaning and reminding us of the delicacy with which we must navigate between the virtual and the concrete. Now, before letting you rest, I want to invite you to one last reflection. In this story, there is more than just data and maps. There is an invitation to listen to calm, to welcome the strange without fear, to allow doubt to be part of the experience. And if this calm journey touched you, how about sharing your impressions here in the comments? Your perspective is important and helps create a community where we can explore the strange and the beautiful with respect and serenity. If you enjoyed this peaceful stroll through mystery and technology, a like helps a lot for Verdade Sonolenta to reach more people who also seek these gentle stories to soothe the mind. And if you're not subscribed yet, consider joining this space where silence and thought have a voice. Subscribing here is more than following a channel. It's choosing a refuge of calm, where the strange becomes poetry and the absurd dissolves in the mist of dreams. Now, close your eyes. Let this real absurdity fade away into the fog of your dreams. Take a deep breath, feel the calm invade, and allow the silence to carry you far away, to a place where the real and the imaginary meet in peace. Good night.